Hey, you. Thank you for joining me, my friend. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for just, letting me annoy you with my Ben Simmons fake trades. First off, I guess just how are you doing? How is your Sixers? Have the Sixers completely destroyed your headspace? Like, how's your Sixers hiatus going?
It's going. I'm definitely like the last couple of days on Twitter. I've at least been tempted to reply to a couple Sixers related like Twitter things, and I've been like, no, just you need the break. You need the time off to regroup. But even having the temptation to dive into the discourse is miles ahead of where I was a week earlier. So I'm on the road to recovery. I think at the very least.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So for the viewers out there, what we're going to do, we're just going to go over an article that I wrote recently about with 10 fake Ben Simmons trades. We're going to kind of debate, which side we are on whether we would do them or not, and we're just going to go from there. So, yeah, and before we get into it, remind everyone this video is sponsored by Body Bio. I'm sure CJ will have all these fancy edits and graphics up for them. So, yeah, Body Bio, it's awesome. You love it. Everybody loves it. All right, let's get into the trades. All right. Trade number one, AU. This one's a bit of a doozy. Ben Simmons, Matisse Thybulle, Tyrese Maxey, 2021 first round pick, unprotected 2023 first round pick, unprotected 2027 first round pick for Damian Lillard and Nasir Little.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as you wrote about in the column yourself, I think when the question is about pairing Lillard and Embiid, you basically can't really quibble too much over the details. The one thing I would ask about this, and obviously, you do this trade probably in a heartbeat, but the one thing I would maybe try to put an amend on is do you think that the Blazers would still do the trade if we subbed in Seth Curry for Matisse Thybulle?
Hmm. I'm tempted to say no because I don't know what they need with Seth Curry. I mean, I guess they could still try to compete, but I think they're just going to be looking for young players.
Right.
But it's tough because it's so much. It's like, where do they draw the line? And I think a lot of it comes down to where does Dame kind of nudge them, and does he say send me to Philly? It comes down to like Philly versus New Orleans. He's gonna say send me to Philly, and then the Sixers can kind of toy with the offer from there. So,
But,
I think a lot depends on that.
your point was that Lillard and Embiid is a title, or at least is automatic contention for a title. I mostly agree with that, but I do wonder how we hold up through 4 rounds in the playoffs with Danny Green at like 35 being potentially our second best defender. Like losing both Simmons and Thybulle changes the team's identity pretty significantly. Did you see that team being able to hold up with basically Joe doing the entire kind of being the anchor and sort of the one-man wrecking crew on defense?
Yeah, I do think they could still be very good defensively. Joel has anchored a lot of really bad lineups to like good defensive ratings. But I also think the important thing to remember is like this is not a 1 year ordeal, right? Like, yes, you want to win right away, but you give Daryl Morey a couple of years with Damian Lillard and Joel Embiid, he's going to figure it out, right? So that I think is what solidifies it. But I want to move along, get your thoughts on these other trades. Like, where do you lie on the Zach LaVine spectrum? Because I feel like I'm more pro Zach LaVine than most people. But the trade I outlined here was Simmons, Shake Milton, this year's first round pick, and a lottery protected 2023 first round pick for Zach LaVine and Al-Farouq Aminu.
Yeah, I mean, the sobering part of this deal is just having the extra stuff in this deal be on our side and not Chicago's, because I feel like if you're talking about this trade 2 years ago, maybe even earlier this season, it probably would have been the other way around. Because, I mean, I think if you look at it in a vacuum, you ask which player contributes more to winning right now. If you were starting a team, it would probably be Simmons rather than LaVine. I mean, just Simmons has made the playoffs every year of his career, plays both sides of the ball, well, one and a half sides of the ball at least, he just had, he has the greater pedigree, the greater series of accomplishments. He's been All NBA, he's been 3-time All Star, all that. So to have to send him out plus other things for LaVine, who's never really won anything and has never really kind of been on a good team for a whole season, is a pretty tough sell. That being said, I probably also would do this trade. I think LaVine and Embiid is another situation where you just kind of figure it out from there. It's he's not Damian Lillard, but he's on a path to becoming kind of a similar sort of offensive force. And last year I think was really impressive. I think everybody sort of saw what he can do with even like a half competent sort of supporting cast around him. I don't think he's ever really going to be able to do that much on that Bulls team, and I think that they're going to sort of hear the clock ticking there with this extension coming up, and the fact that they've never been able to build a winning roster around him. So I think it's a trade that probably does make sense for both sides. You can maybe quibble on the sort of the fine print about what we're sending out in addition to Simmons, but I think the core of a Simmons for LaVine swap, I like that. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and plus, you kind of touched on the idea that they would be able to keep Maxey and Thibault, and that's huge, right? Like having those two guys to round out your rotation, like that eliminates the worry of can you build, a good supporting cast around them. You can probably, try to contend in the first year no matter what. So yeah, I agree. It's funny coming from this conversation. I just did the podcast with Spike, and Spike was like, "There's no way the Bulls would do this deal. There's no chance." And I that's the funny thing about writing these fake trade articles. Like you just get absolutely shat on from both sides. Like people saying like, "There's no way the Sixers should do that," or like, "Why would the Bulls ever do this?" But
real quick, kind of in connection to this, like obviously Simmons' trade value is pretty hard to peg right now. Do you think Shake Milton is basically like just a throw-in at this point? I mean, like we talked about him, we used to talk about him as one of the Sixers' best trade assets, and now obviously a very weird end of the season and postseason later doesn't feel quite so concrete. But if I was another GM, I would certainly want to buy low on that guy. I mean, do you think his value is close to nil?
I agree. I think he has some value for sure. It's tough though because like you would be kind of trading him at like a very what do you call it, like a bottom of his value.
Mid-year.
Yeah, exactly. So I still have high hopes for Shake. And keep in mind, like he averaged 13 a game this year. It wasn't like he had a terrible year. I mean, I think he was the fourth leading scorer on the team. Like he's gonna be a solid player for a number of years here. But I do think Thibault is generally more thought of as like a more valuable asset. But whatever. I mean, I think honestly the LaVine trade is the most likely trade on the entire list. That's just my opinion. I just think it makes a lot of sense. But number 3, I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is basically the same offer for Dame except with Shake instead of Thibault and a little more protection on those picks. Do you think that I'm overestimating Beal's value? Would you do that trade? Do you think the gap between Beal and Lillard is big? What do you think?
It's hard for me to tell. I think I don't know. I don't know if I'd say I'd rather do this deal than the Dame deal, but I think that betting on the younger guy who's kind of still improving and still I don't know. I feel like he might have more high level years ahead of him than Dame does, but Dame's obviously more accomplished. If we can get him, we do this deal. I think at this point, it's funny. Like I remember having this discussion after the Harden sweepstakes kind of bottomed out, and people saying that there's no way you can trade Simmons for Beal. Now I think we'd probably be pretty lucky to be able to do that. But I mean, if they were willing to trade him, I don't understand why. So why do you think Beal is off the board but Lillard isn't? Is it just because we've gotten more of the kind of hint from Lillard that things are rotten in Denmark there?
Yeah, exactly. And with the Wizards, it's like it kind of doesn't make sense to acquire Simmons and all these young players when you have Russell Westbrook for what is it, 4 more years? Like that's just like you're not going to bottom out, but your team's going to make no sense. Like it's just hard. So I don't really see them making a huge Beal trade this offseason. It would have to be Beal forcing his way out, even then, which he's not given any indications that he's trying to do. So yeah, I don't see that as super likely. But yeah, all right. So let's move on to the one that I have gotten probably the most pushback on, and that's Ben Simmons, Shake Milton, and this year's second-round pick for C.J. McCollum and Robert Covington. And I can't totally understand why everyone hates this so much. Do you hate it? Where do you?
I don't hate it. So is the most of the criticism you've gotten is just that CJ is not a high enough ceiling guy to trade Ben for?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I mean, at the beginning of this year, CJ was playing like an all-star. I mean, he was averaging close to 30 a game, like making 5 threes a night, something like that. Like he was playing definitely the best basketball of his career, and then obviously he got hurt and it didn't come back quite the same level. If we got that guy's worth trading Ben Simmons for. I mean, if you pair that guy and Embiid, then I mean the problem with CJ was always that he was a little bit too much of the mid-range. He wasn't shooting from distance enough, and he wasn't quite efficient enough to make up for that. But it seemed like the player we saw at the beginning of this year was that guy that was kind of the best case scenario version of him. If he can do that sustainably, and I think there's probably reason to believe that separated from Lillard and kind of be made more of the focus of the offense, he could be. Then yeah, and I'm surprised that the throw in of Rocco as like the second part of this deal. I'm surprised that wasn't more enticing for people. That's not nothing. I mean, I think Covington's been. I think he's maybe been exposed a little bit for not being the kind of automatic, key to winning that we sort of viewed him as when he got sent to Minnesota, and the Wolves were playing well with him at first, and then he got hurt, and I don't have quite the same faith in Covington that I did when we first shipped him out, but he's a good player. He certainly helps us, and especially if we have to lose Simmons, then we're going to need a lot of that perimeter defense, a lot of the sort of things that he provides. I think it's a great deal. I mean, it does maybe hurt a little bit to just kind of take the step back from Simmons to a guy that's never been an All-Star and very well might never be if he doesn't kind of replicate that first half of the year performance. But I think it's probably worth rolling the dice on. I like this deal.
Yeah, I mean, just getting another starter quality player back in the deal as well in Covington, like that is a huge deal, right? Like you become, you offset some of the loss of Simmons' defense, and like you just having like you don't lose any depth in that equation either. So I don't know, the way that I phrase this, and I think this applies to almost maybe not the top tier trades, but any trade from like here down, is all of these would be a slight step back in the regular season, but a legitimate step forward in the postseason, right? Like CJ McCollum, not as good a regular season player as Ben Simmons, better postseason player. Like there's, and people for some reason think that like CJ is like a no-show in the playoffs. He has not averaged under 20 points a game in a playoff series in 5 years.
Did not realize that.
What are we doing?
I guess
go ahead.
Sorry, the question. I mean, the good thing about this trade, as you propose it, is that it leaves us with enough stuff to do more moves on top of it to kind of flesh out the roster from there, because you do kind of have the question of, if you do trade Simmons for CJ, who's starting in the backcourt alongside him. Maxey and CJ is a pretty small backcourt. Seth Curry and CJ is a pretty deficient backcourt. I don't know if we have the guy to really that kind of complements him to work alongside him yet. But we still have Maxey, you still have Matisse, you still have most of our first round picks. Then you can go out and presumably get that guy too if more is up for it.
I think the answer is Maxey, because I think Maxey can kind of guard, and I think you need someone who's going to be like putting pressure on the rim downhill, and who thinks more like a point guard, like that, like someone who's going to call the sets and get people organized in a way that like Seth Curry is not going to do, right? But okay, I want to move on to one of my favorite trades on the list. I don't think it'll happen, but I just like the idea of it. So this one is a three-way deal where the Thunder get Anthony Edwards and Ricky Rubio. The Timberwolves get Ben Simmons and the Sixers' second-round pick. And the Sixers get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Alexei Pokusevsky. So every team kind of gets something that they want, right? Sixers get Shai and a flyer on Poku. Timberwolves get Ben Simmons, who they're supposedly very interested in and who I think actually makes a lot of sense for them. And the Thunder get a guy in Anthony Edwards in exchange for Shai, who's like more on their timeline. They could just give him the keys, let him develop, take their time with him. I think everybody kind of gets something they want. I don't know if the Wolves will be willing to trade Edwards, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it depends on whether or not you believe all those, like the reports. I don't even remember who those reports are sourced from, if anybody, that the Wolves really, really want Simmons and that the Thunder are looking to move on from SGA. I don't necessarily believe either of those. Great if the Sixers can get this done. I don't think the Wolves are trading Edwards. I'd be surprised if the Thunder were willing to move on from SGA really that easily. But if they can do it, then yeah. I mean, you get basically everything you want in SGA. You don't quite get the shooting, but you get the downhill penetration. You get the sort of attacking guard mentality that you really sort of need, and we haven't had in a very long time.
Totally.
I don't know how he holds up on defense. I haven't gone that deep behind the numbers there, but that seems like a guy who's both pretty ready to contribute now and still has a lot of room to get better, and that's sort of what you want alongside Embiid. So that's a great trade if we can do it. I think it's sort of a pipe dream.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So how about this one for a similar type of player? I guess Kings get Ben Simmons, this year's first-round pick and next year's second-round pick, for De'Aaron Fox and the Kings' first-round pick next year.
Yeah, this one I have the hardest time kind of sussing out. Like the De'Aaron Fox, I've always thought is a little bit overrated, but I think that the Kings love him, or the Kings fans certainly love him, and I think he does have like a pretty high stock around the league. trading one point guard who can't really shoot for another one who definitely can't shoot is sort of an interesting proposal. I don't really know where I land on this one, to be honest. There's a lot going on here. I think if it happens, I think the Sixers fans would be excited about De'Aaron Fox. I think the Kings fans would probably be not so excited about Ben Simmons, but he would probably, again, that team hasn't won in 15 years, so maybe just trying to get like a legitimate two-way player who can slide it inside Halliburton and Hield. Maybe that works for them. That seems a little bit like a head scratcher to me. Is this one you think actually has a chance of happening?
I mean, it makes some sense. I don't know. Like it's if they view, because you can with Simmons you can play the game where you act like he's like a point forward, like interchangeable between point forward and point guard, and then he can play alongside Halliburton and Hield, and it like you can just talk yourself into the fit there, making sense. And maybe they get to the point with Fox where they're like, we've had this guy for 4 years, he hasn't impacted winning at all. Ben Simmons won in the regular season from the second he's been in the league. Like, let's do this. So that I could see happening. Their defense has always been bad too, and Ben would help with that. So that's the justification behind it. I agree it's unlikely though.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a logic to it. I just can't say the Kings giving up a Fox. He's the only really good thing that's happened to them in the last 10 years. I don't see them they're cashing in on him quite so early. But you're right. He does. If you're looking for the guys that you'd want to play next to Simmons, it probably would be Halliburton and to a lesser extent Hield. So it does sort of make sense. But the Kings have not always followed what's made sense. So we'll see about that.
Fair enough. Okay, now we get into the ones that I don't even know if I would do. This one I especially hate. Ben Simmons for Kevin Love, Colin Sexton, Dylan Windler, and a top 10 protected first-round pick for 2023.
I mean, you can't really see this one helping the Sixers win in the next year, maybe even the next 2 years. Sexton, I mean, I like him when he plays against us. Certainly, he's an effective scoring guard. The fact that they've never even sniffed a winning season with him, I mean, to an extent, it's the same thing that you're always saying about Trae Young and Devin Booker, where like these guys don't win until they're in a situation to win, and then all of a sudden it's not so detrimental. But I think he's still a couple years. His timeline's a little bit doesn't really match with ours the same way some of these other guys we're talking about do. That said, I would be almost interested in doing this deal just for the Kevin Love portion being like the ultimate test of Mike's no player is bad theory. Where it's just like get these guys out of a terrible situation into a good situation, and it turns out that they've been good all along. If Kevin Love is still playable, then that's I think that's the ultimate validation for that theory. But I have not particularly enjoyed what I've seen out of Kevin Love the past 2.5 years, so I would not dive headfirst into that one.
What I said to Spike too was that if Kevin Love doesn't turn out to have anything left in the tank, and Colin Sexton gets under Embiid's skin, Embiid's gone in a year.
Yeah, and then the Cavs mojo. I don't want those guys. I mean, it would not shock me if you told me that Colin Sexton was an All-Star in 2 years, and he has his Devin Booker moment a year or two after that. But I of all the options on this list, this is definitely the one that feels the most dreadful.
Yeah. Okay, how about this one? Simmons for DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray, and the 12th overall pick in this one.
I love DeMar DeRozan so much, but him in the playoffs is just a horror show. I mean, even in the play-in game this year, I don't know if you remember, he was 4 for 20. He had some just god-awful line. I want him so badly to just have kind of one good playoff moment to redeem the narrative a little bit and prove that he's not just a regular season guy, but he's probably just a regular season guy. And the fact that he doesn't shoot, and I mean, he actually has become a really, really good playmaker. He's still kind of a negative on defense, but as a playmaker, it would be kind of awesome seeing him and Joe work together. But every year he tantalizes with kind of expanding his game range-wise, and then he ends up kind of losing interest a month into the season. And then every year in the postseason, he's just a total no-show. So, and any deal that's sort of based around him being the short-term part of it, I don't think really gets us where we need to be. DeJounte Murray, he's a hell of a player, and he probably he'll be a reasonable facsimile of a lot of what Ben brings us, but he's not the answer to the problems we really have there. And this trade would be fun for me just on a personal level, but for a team level, I don't think it's justifiable.
I'm with you. I like DeRozan too, but I can't expend too much energy defending him or taking out for him because the playoffs are it's so bad. Yeah, it's so bad.
He'll be good off the bench for somebody sometime, I hope, but it's not going to be with us as the primary return to Ben Simmons trades. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, he'll be Jamal Crawford in 2 years. I like that. All right, this one people really hated. Ben Simmons and George Hill for Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier.
Ooh, I like this
Yeah.
one. I mean, this one is the one where, like, if you look at it like solely on a basketball perspective, you can't find too much at fault for it, but it feels wrong on so many different kind of visceral internal levels. Yeah, I mean, if Hayward was a little.
If you were told about this trade like a year and a half ago, you would implode. Like,
Yeah, it's
the idea of this is so ridiculous.
It's unthinkable on a number of different levels. But I think you wrote about this. But if Hayward was healthy, and you can kind of guarantee that Hayward was healthy, there probably is a path to talking yourself into it. Because between those two guys, they do give us a lot of what we need. And the Hornets for the first half of this year were actually a pretty respectable team, and those two guys both played a pretty large role in that. It can't happen. It's just that if that's what it comes down to, then we're in such a sad state that it's almost not worth getting invested in. So I would almost admire Daryl Morey for having the balls to do this trade. This is sort of like the exponential version of getting Dwight Howard as a cheap veteran pickup at the end of the trade, at the end of the free agency rush last year, which is like, really, Dwight Howard, like nobody likes that guy. Nobody was going to want him on the Sixers, but it was the cold, clinical basketball decision, and for the regular season, at least, it was the right move. And this could be also that, but I wouldn't risk it if I were him.
I think Daryl should just try and cycle through every member of the 2019 Celtics and see which one fits with Embiid. And it wasn't Horford. Maybe it'll be Hayward and Rozier. If not, try like Semi Ojeleye.
Oh yeah, he'll be available soon. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Just cycle through all of them, see which one works.
So are there any other partners that you tried to find a plausible fit for this, but you just couldn't quite work it out? Like any other sort of like pie in the sky targets that there's just no plausible trade for?
No, I mean I did reach a lot. I mean, the fact that I thought I could pull off a De'Aaron Fox trade should tell you that, like, if I saw a target, I was going for it. So yeah, I don't know. Did you have any in mind of like pipe?
Yeah, the only one that I've seen mentioned that I didn't see you touch on, and it also probably won't happen, is to Denver for Michael Porter Jr., which kind of does make more sense than when you kind of think about it. Simmons is a really good sort of connector between Murray and Jokic. I mean, I guess you don't really know what you're getting from Murray next year, considering that they want to contend immediately. Maybe they just wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't touch anything that sort of relies on Murray being that top level contributor. But like those three guys kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
A little bit. I think that Ben slightly violates the ethos of Denver, where Ben is just like the ethos of Denver is like give Jokic the ball and everybody cut like crazy. Whereas Ben is kind of like, actually give me the ball and I will stand here in the post and watch it happen. So like I don't know. There's like a lack of like urgency to Ben, especially I mean on or off the ball, where he's just like. Everything in Denver feels like it has to be like chaos, and like I said, Ben really likes to survey the floor. Like I got this. Like watch, let shit happen. It's either that or he's standing like idly by in the dunker spot. One of the two. There's not a lot of like frenzied, chaotic motion going on with Ben's game. So
this is true. The transition game would be pretty unbeatable though.
Yes.
This was sort of the fever dream that they finally realized with the Iguodala Nuggets in 2013. This would sort of be like the adrenalized version of that.
I love those Iguodala Nuggets. They were the best.
Yeah, man. Could have happened.
All right, last one. I assume this is a no. Ben Simmons for Karis LeVert, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and 2 first-round picks.
Oof. I really like Karis LeVert. I mean, it's again. I think you said this in the article, but if you were sure that he was healthy, this could really be something you talk yourself into.
Yeah.
Because I mean, LeVert. I mean, aside from being the sort of archetypal player that always kills us, it does seem like he's the kind of like that guy can get a basket in any situation with any pressure defense on him. He might not always get the best look, but he'll get a look, and he's a pretty credible shooter, pretty credible playmaker. I would love to get that guy on the Sixers, but as you say, I think he hasn't been fully healthy for something like 4 years, and that's a long time to not be fully healthy for, and especially when Embiid is our other sort of anchor. That it gives you a lot of pause, and the other stuff that we'd get from Indiana is nice, but not nice enough that you can just kind of look off. LeVert didn't pan out, but the rest of the stuff we got is really helpful. Like it would be sort of helpful, but not. So it probably won't happen, but that's the one where it's like if you tweak maybe a couple parts of it, the framework is there for a deal I could talk myself into.
Yeah, it's really hard to overcome the fact that LeVert is probably going to play 45 games a year, and Simmons is probably going to play 75 games a year.
For sure.
And just missing 30 games of like star level talent is just tough. So I mean, like I said, if I could like consult some doctor who told me that LeVert was going to be healthy, I would do it. But otherwise, I don't think so.
Do you think LeVert is one of those guys that seems better when he's on the other team than when he's on yours? Like maybe once you kind of really dig into it, it might be that too. Yeah.
Because this is something that I've really noticed. Like I've noticed it a lot if I like go to a game and I am not looking at the box score the whole time. I think you could also notice it if like you're rooting against the guy, right? And you're not necessarily paying attention to the box score. You will feel like he like kills you. But then you look up and he was like 9 for 29.
For sure.
And it's like how does that happen? So yeah, I definitely think he could be one of those types of guys, but he's still really good.
Yeah, no doubt. I would do terrible things to get him on the Sixers, but maybe not this exact terrible thing.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you for doing this. Is there one of these that you feel is like your favorite or most likely to happen? Which any of them you particularly like?
Yeah, the Levine one. I think I like the idea of not giving up everything to sort of. I like the idea of kind of still having some chips in reserve after we make this deal, because I think whatever deal we make here, it's not going to end up with a complete team. It's going to leave us pretty compromised in one area or another, and I'd like to still have stuff to go out and get more players. And Levine, like I sort of talked myself fully into Levine as the third piece alongside, potentially even the fourth piece along Simmons, Harris, and Embiid last year. That didn't end up working out, but I still think that Levine plus Embiid is a really, really solid combination. And even if it's not automatic championship contention the way Lillard would be, it kind of gives us room to move. And I think that's the deal worth doing to me.
Hear me out. They do the Levine trade and then like a sign and trade with Toronto for Kyle Lowry. I mean, it
could happen. Yeah, I mean, we still have the stuff for that.
Yeah, they definitely could. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for doing this and taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it. Just letting me bother you with all my insane ideas. So yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for watching. As always, this video is sponsored by Body Bio. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.
My name's Eddie. I'm a bodyweight boot camp instructor. I was teaching a class outdoors. Class ended, I got in my car. My body started shutting down. My legs were going numb, my vision started going white. I downed Body Bio E-Lite and just passed out. A lot of people that have heat strokes this severe don't wake up on their own. These days, I make sure to add Body Bio E-Lite to my water whenever I do workouts. I'm where I am today because of Body Bio E-Lite.